Good morning, everyone. For our guests who traveled from overseas to join us, I hope that you had a safe flight and you have enjoyed the few days that you have been in Ghana. This morning, for other competing reasons, the Vice Chancellor couldn't be here with us, and she extends her regards and would want me to represent her in providing this welcome address. The Honorable Ashanti Regional Minister, the Director of National Communications Authority, Deputy Director, Ministry of Environment, Science and Technology, the National Coordinator, Responsible Cooperative Mining and Skills Development, the Regional Director of Food and Agriculture, Directors of CSIR Soil Research Institute and Crops Research Institute, immediate, past, and current provosts of the College of Agriculture and Natural Resources, deans, heads of department, other senior members of Faculty of Agriculture, Dean International Programs Office, KNUST, our cherished international scientists,
Please appreciate Professor Samuel Asaring-Khansah once again. That was a very forward-looking and inspiring message coming from the university to welcome us all. And definitely, I hope you do enjoy your stay for the next few days ahead. At this point, we will take another speech from the Dean of the International Programs Office, who is the pillar fostering global partnerships here in KNUST. Please appreciate him as he comes to do that for us.
Good morning to you all. The good morning was to everybody. Good morning to you all. Please, the appreciation, if you can add a little bit more to it, please. Let's clap. Thank you all so much. Professor Samuel Asaring-Khansah, kindly permit me to stand on the existing protocols which you have beautifully laid to continue with my speech. On behalf of the International Programs Office of the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, it is my honor and joy to welcome you to our campus and to the historic city of Kumasi, the cultural heart of Ghana and the seat of the Asante Kingdom. Today, we gather under the banner of science and shared responsibility, the responsibility to protect our land, restore ecosystems, and ensure that progress does not come at the expense of planetary health. The European Joint Program, See Around, represents exactly the kind of transnational collaboration that our office seeks to foster. One that is grounded in mutual respect, knowledge exchange, and enduring partnership. At KNUST, we believe that international cooperation is not only about the mobility of scholars, but about the mobility of ideas. Ideas that travel across borders to improve livelihoods and transform societies. Through this workshop, we are proud to host colleagues from Europe, Latin America, North America, and across Africa, who are jointly redefining how soil carbon, greenhouse gases, and regenerative practices are studied and applied. As the International Programs Office at KNUST, our mandate is to make such engagements seamless in order to connect people, institutions, and cultures in ways that advance scientific discovery and sustainable development. We are delighted to see this realized through the collaboration between 13 institutions in countries spread over almost the entire continent, and of course, our communities in Ghana. To our visitors joining us in Ghana for the first time, we say, Akwaba. You are most welcome. We hope that beyond the academic sessions, you will take time to experience our hospitality, explore the KNUST Botanical Gardens, and feel the warmth and vibrancy of Kumasi's people. We definitely have this on the program, so enjoy that. Let us use this week not only to discuss data and models, but also to build trust, friendships, and long-term pathways for a regenerative change. I urge us all to leave this workshop with a renewed conviction that sustainable practices and climate action must go hand in hand, informed by science, guided by policy, and inspired by humanity. I wish you fruitful deliberations, enjoyable interactions, and a memorable stay in Ghana. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Dia. Please do well for him, do better for him. All right, and definitely I hope you enjoy your stay, especially in Kumasi. You have wonderful things to look out for when you are here. By way of housekeeping, may I remind us that washrooms are available on the other side of this auditorium. So if you want to use a washroom, you can use either this exit or that. Or you can even go out from where you came from and go all the way down there. You would find them. They are labeled both for males and females. And so please, or as well, you can talk to the ushers over there and they will assist you nicely to be able to find your way there. At this point, we'd want to take another speech from the representative from the Soil Research Institute. Please appreciate him as he comes.
Thank you very much, Madam. Good morning to you all. My name is Dr. Patrick Ofori. I am the Deputy Director of CSIR Soil Research Institute, and my director has asked me to represent him on this program as he's on another assignment in Accra. Representative of the Vice Chancellor of KNUST, may I seek your permission to stand on the existing protocols and make my speech. On behalf of the Director and Management of CSIR Soil Research Institute, I wish to express our profound gratitude to the organizers of this program for the invitation to participate in this maiden EJP CR1 project workshop in Ghana. CSIR Soil Research Institute is one of the 13 research institutes in Ghana under the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. Our mission is to generate scientific information and technologies for the planning, development, and management of Ghana's soil resources, promoting sustainable agriculture, industry, and environmental quality. Our vision is to become the center of excellence in research and management of the soil resources of Ghana for sustainable agriculture and environmental quality. Our key objectives are: 1, to strengthen the Institute's delivery capacity for increased agricultural food production, to establish and strengthen linkages with local and international institutions, to develop and promote sustainable agricultural practices, and to commercialize our research findings. We at SRI leverage the skills and knowledge of our scientists and technicians from 5 key divisions, namely the Soil Genesis, Survey, Mapping, and Classification Division, Soil Chemistry and Analytical Services, Soil Fertility and Plant Nutrition, then the Soil Microbiology Division, as well as the Soil and Water Management Division. Over the years, CSIR Soil Research Institute has been at the forefront in championing the need to recarbonize our highly weathered soils through the dissemination of sustainable soil management technologies to farmers. And key among these are the application of organic amendments such as biochar, manure, compost, and other crop residues. We are of the firm belief that in this era of climate change, one of the safest means to reduce carbon emissions is to put back carbon into the soil in a much stable form. SRI is a key partner in the implementation of the EJP program in Ghana, with one of our staff members currently enrolled in the PhD program under the supervision of Professor Loga and Dr. Edward Yeboah. We believe that our participation in this maiden workshop will strengthen our partnership with EJP and also open doors for further collaborations with other partners. I wish you all a fruitful workshop and enjoy your stay in Ghana, those of us coming to Ghana for the first time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you so much. And to your team for all the work you do around here for our crops and our soil and every other thing agriculture. We are taking another speech still from CSIR, but this time from the Crop Research Institute. Please appreciate them as he comes. Oh, we can do better. Are we hungry?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Prof. Chair. I want to stand on the protocol that you have established already and proceed. I want to say I'm going to save you some time so that we can take more speeches and be able to also conduct the workshop on time. So my name is...
Because we have not only land use and intensification, but we are in the context of climate change, but also developed innovative method of sensing technology, specifically some of the practices that need to be assessed and to follow and record. And then when I'm talking about that, it's basically on carbon stock. So we need to find a way on how to find cheaper way, but also efficient way to monitor the carbon stock locally, but also internationally. So this is, this project is part of the international concept, and then basically it is part of the topic B, which is managing soil in the context of climate change, understanding impact of carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus cycling and greenhouse gas emission, and removal using data derived from the long-term experimental sites, but also benchmark farming. It involved also 12 countries from around the world. It was mentioned in the beginning of this presentation today, this morning, basically from Brazil, France, Norway, Uruguay, South Africa, Canada, Namibia, Ghana, Estonia, and Hungary, New Zealand, and Germany. So this is a really various set of sites, but also set of country with the experience, but also for a lot of discovery. So this project standard for 36 months. It started on May 23, and then will end the next year, 2010. We are extending, and it will be a discussion on how we are going to move on for another year without any extra money, because it is very important to extend the project as far we still have some money, but we're also reaching a kind of, let's say, data. These data need to be processed. It will be a pity if we end the project on May without finalizing the whole objective that we have promised during this project. So this is the coordination. The main coordination is from Embrapa, and I'm just vice coordinator in this project. Just to, it was the institution that are, you can see here, involved in this project. This is also reflecting the countries, and that's very well experienced, but also not only in agriculture, but also with respect to climate change management and all of these things. What are the main questions? So this is a very ambitious project that I think that is a 3 years project or 4 years. It is not enough, but I think it was also it was understandable from the funding agency that we are not going to produce all of what is here and to respond to the data that's able to respond to this question, and the way basically coming from increasing the agriculture practices that are most effective in increasing carbon stock. That means what are the agriculture practices that's able to increase the carbon stocks and at what rates. But this is also here is a matter of discussion, because we need not to focus only on carbon stock, but also to keep an eye on other greenhouse gases, because increasing carbon stock without keeping an eye on greenhouse gas emissions, that doesn't make sense. So we have to have a combined effect while reducing, but also reducing greenhouse gas carbon and also increasing carbon stock. So this is two ways on how these two components are linked to each other. The microbiome, I think that this microbiome is very important. You're not saying my slide here. I'm talking in the sky. I didn't touch anything. The first objective, which is this, and this is how we call two ways on how to increase the carbon stock, but also we have to keep an eye on greenhouse gas emissions. So this is really a very two components that are closely connected. The microbiome, that is very important. There's been a lot of discussion in the literature, but also in the past, and still ongoing things. So at what extent the all intensification management affecting the microbiome, which is not, when I talk about the microbiome, we have to keep an eye not only on micro, but also in soil fauna, which are intimately also doing a big role on carbon, but also on nitrogen, and then also on the stock humidity itself. So how these managements are affecting these things, and at what, which consequences. And then the nutrient, when we talk about the carbon, we have to also to keep in mind that also increasing the nutrient, and because it is they are completely linked, so it is disappearing again. And then yes, it happened. So we have, you see, we have the increase on the practices that also push the carbon stocks. We have the microbe, and then we have the nutrients. So this is something that we need to manage. But in the meantime, there is no, how we call a magic recipe. You do something, but you have the side effect of the practices that you are doing. So you would never have at the best component that your system is perfectly 100% sufficient. So you need to manage your trade-off. And trade-off that are between the carbon stocks, carbon sequestration and greenhouse emission. This is very important. We have had 2 PhD students once within the framework of 4 per mil initiative, because it's one of the big discussions going on. That's at what extent you increase the carbon stock, but also increasing carbon stock, you reduce carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, which is a good thing. But in the meantime, with this carbon stock that you are increasing is also not turn out to release nitrogen oxide emission, which has a devastating effect on climate change, specifically the warming potential, which is 300 times higher than the CO2. And we have some of the results showing that, of course, there is no close correlation between the increase of carbon stock and nitrogen oxide emission, but the problem is depend on the quality and the quantity of the carbon you have in this system. This is very important if you have how we call organic carbon, which is basically constituted of labile compound, then you stimulate the greenhouse gas emission in the system. So there is a kind of combination that you have to keep an eye on it and make sure that your quality and quantity of carbon you have in the system, based on the management that you are doing, you have to assess at how much of this nitrogen oxide emission is going to the atmosphere. This is very important in terms of this trade-off, because also you have the stoichiometry itself is changing, CNP, so you have to also combine all of these things together, and you have to have the whole picture how these things are interaction to each other. The climate, of course, it is also another. You manage, but we are in the middle of the climate change. There is no way to avoid it. We have to deal with it, and we have to manage our system based from what we have on the top, which is climate change. What are the consequences of extreme climate change, specifically the extreme events? Some of this site, they didn't have rain for years. Now they have intensive rain or extensive or extreme drought. So this system is responding differently from what are the duplication, repetitivity of this extreme event in the system. So need to be captured from the site. And then, of course, we need to develop what we call the indicators of the best practices, which is, for me, is a big word, because we can assess some of them, but for me, the list can be very, very long, and then you have to select the one that are more responding to the management that you are doing in the system. So, no, it is not. What? It's okay. So this is to give you the context on how this thing. But what are the main objectives of this round? And you can see that the project itself, round, represents a kind of exploratory effort to couple, because I told you 3 years you cannot do everything, so you have to start from what is already available and then build on this what we have what we promote in this project. So this is an exploratory effort to couple the stoichiometry driver to microbial populations related to carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus cycling, and stock and greenhouse emission and the drivers, diverse agriculture practices. We have also at each of the site, we have 37 field sites with different chronoseconds or contrasting agriculture management, in which 26 established for at least 10 years. So it was a kind of promise when we selected this site, that the site we should not start from scratch, but at least have some historical data in a way that we can build on the top, but also adjusting, coming with the new data in a way that we can strengthen the model, but also test the model and then validate the model. So at each of the sites, we can estimate the scenario modeling of possible emission, for example, nitrogen oxide, CO2, and methane from the cropping, pasture, and forest system, because we have basically most of the land use, forest, crops, and pasture, and then and try to assess this based what we call here the IPCC or local emission factors, that just make a simplistic model from what IPCC has been done to calculate how much of this carbon or greenhouse gases emitting based on this emission factor that are what's developed within the IPCC program. So what is the approach? As I said in the beginning, we don't have time, short, and then we will also start from what we have already in the system. That means this project, and I have to be very clear on that the project will build on a worldwide database. This is very important, of the carbon nitrogen stock that already exists in all of these different countries, but also in the different sites that's been proposed in this project, which means carbon nitrogen, bulk density, soil fertility, greenhouse gas if it's available, ecosystem and the differentiation agriculture. And then, of course, furthermore, that the project will determine at what event extent of climatic condition we can evaluate the net primary production of the cropping system and soil types, effect on sea and N stock, nutrients, and then, of course, greenhouse gas emission. And the final product of the project will be to build, recommend best management practices, I mean, for farmers, but also for stakeholder and policymaker. This is what we sold in this project, and then what we are committed to deliver at the end of this project. And you see here, we have a very nice map worldwide in which we are covering basically all of sites. And the most tricky thing sometimes in the beginning when you start writing the project, they can add the points and on different sites, but when it comes to collecting the data, it's another story. It's another story, another big fight. It doesn't mean that this data doesn't exist. It exists, but you have to put it in an available way, but in a available format, in a way that it can be used easily. And sometimes it can take weeks, even months, and years to put all of these data together. So this is where we are, and I think this is very important. If we can extend the project for another year, it will make really this project a very successful project. So how this thing will work, and what are the philosophy of this project? We have the site that from North America. We have 2 sites in North America. We have basically, let's say, 90 sites from South America, basically most of them from Uruguay and Brazil. We have 9 sites in Europe, and then we have 6 sites in Africa. And in Australia, my colleague David Whitehouse is here, and then they have a long set of the data also. All of the data, they have to be shared out to a database. It can be calculated or raw data, and this data should be treated or managed or how we call accurately in work package 1 and work package 2, which are at times connected to the work package 3, and in a way that we can provide not also for the modeling exercise, but also for providing some of the scenario and some of the how we call the best practices and how these things are moving in a way that we can convey this information to the stakeholder and farmers. So, of course, for every project we have to, this is a very important component, what are the impact of this project? And I think that is why this project has been selected for a very competitive. Why? Because it was not only covering a worldwide, but also it's trying to explore some of the area that never have been explored, but also to make this data also playing a role in the modeling exercise. So the first thing which has been looking for the funding agency is that creates a global data set, which is very important as much as you are trying to have a philosophy to build a database and also covering the sites that are not yet covered. And you know, all of this is not a criticism. We are missing and we are lacking data from the African continent. So we have only few data from the African continent. And of these data specifically on carbon stock, specifically on greenhouse gas emissions, specifically on management. So when we build these global models, so we try with 1 point sometimes and 2 points, try to exploit what's going on in Africa or which is completely not really without huge uncertainties. So as far we are building this data and increasing this data in this continent, we will make this project or the modeling assessment and the projection more strong and more efficient, not only for providing and advising the, how we call the best management practice, but also in the context of climate change and, as you know, really, and an increasing population in which we put the soil and the resources and their traits. The second thing is determined to what extent climatic conditions have been talking about and how they move up, because we know all of these things will not respond in the same manner. We have what we call the region-specific, not the whole continent will respond the same, similarly to all the climate, but also region-specific, and the region-specific, it depends on the management. And this is the thing that we need to deepen and need to look more in detail at what extent this regionality in the system of a country or a part of the country is influencing all of these things. And of course, least not is to provide the best management practices. So this is how we call this project, as I said, will build on a worldwide data set on carbon, nitrogen, and bulk density and all of these things. And then we need this data, and I hope that this data can be made available as soon as possible in a way that if we extend the project, we will be ready to run some of these scenarios and then provide some of the things that we provide to do it. That's it. If you have any urgent question, but we will have the whole week to discuss all these things. Okay?
Doc just took us to the classroom, and there were lots of things, and I'm sure you wrote some things down. And so if you have some questions, you can ask, and he would answer. Please, do you have any questions here? Okay. Please appreciate Doctor. That was a very extensive one. Even with a very short notice, he gave us a very wonderful one. Dr. Shabi, thank you so much. At this point, I think we've been sitting for so long, and I'm even struggling to get you to clap, and so I know that we need to get some food, and so we would want to take a coffee break. We should be back in like 30 minutes, so please, you just go outside, you see a canopy over there, outside the hall, I mean. Sorry, and there's a shade outside there. On my right, when you go there, there's variety, and so you're going to be served whatever you desire to eat this morning. And so please, shall we go, because you have just 30 minutes to come back and continue with the panel discussions. Please appreciate yourself for staying through all the speeches and listening to our stakeholders. Thank you. Thank you so much. So we'll be back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let me to speak. Okay.
I've seen is that now it's becoming, it's generating, it could generate, let me say it could generate because we just started. There is a company now, Vaxos GPT, that has developed a solution based on the data that they are just waiting to plug in. So once the data is being put on the platform, they get Vaxos GPT. Basically, you can go to vaxosgpt.io. What they do is that once they plug in, then they create plugin, then they create access to carbon market for smallholder farmers. It's access to carbon market for smallholder farmers. So data now is generating what? Money. So I think it is efficient. So instead of gathering the soil samples, taking it to the lab and measuring it, now we've cut short the timelines. You have a sensor in the field, it's measuring, put on the platform, everybody can see it, and then verifiable. So I think technology now is making our lives easier. And that in the Deeper Lab, through our collaboration with you, we are beginning to see some of these things bear fruit, even in the life of smallholder farmers. Thank you, Caleb.
Thank you very much, Eric.
Just maybe I can add something. You mentioned you mentioned about the artificial intelligence, and then it is a good thing, but also we have to be very careful with that. I mean, sometimes it's a lot of extrapolation that can be not completely real, a word, and then it can be now. It is at our institute, at the INRA Institute, now there is what we call we have to be, there is a special word that we have to use because the ChatGPT can generate the experimentation and then with randomized things and for many years, but when you click on these experiments, it never exists. So you can have this set of the data and then publish this data and while this experiment never exists. So this is a kind of things that we have, and our institutes are taking really seriously this problem, but also some of the journal, because you need. Another thing that what we really can help is that having some of the technology that can help us to assess if carbon is complicated, carbon stock is complicated, but I still believe that we need a different combination of measurement. We need to apply the satellite. We need to apply field measurement. It is the most important thing is the field measurement. And then, of course, having this information together with the help of the artificial intelligence to put all of these data together. But I don't think that just with the artificial intelligence, I can't say really that you scan this thing and then you have an amount of carbon per square meter, but then and the evolution real time of this thing. We need to have the hand measuring all of these things. Something that is now it is a big discussion also in France, but also started to develop and across Europe that people they use. We have these things that have been also developed in Australia. They use the satellite images, and then they use also some of the carbon measurement, and with some help of the modeling, they can make an assessment of what may happen with such a practices in terms on how these practices, in terms how they are changing the carbon stock. But the problem is that all of this mobile, because it was a market behind, this is MRV, monitoring, reporting, and validation, because they need to earn money, and then they have to run after the money with always. And then what happened is that they measure some of the point in one plot or something, only few numbers of carbon, and they change the measurement from the carbon in the vegetation, put it in the model, and are trying to translate what carbon in the vegetation, it is also carbon stock translated to. And then the carbon in the vegetation is just not carbon stock. So it's providing a kind of raw images, and then not a trustful images and how this carbon is moving. So this is a different way. I agree with the technology, but we have to keep an eyes, we human and scientists, that you have something really accurate and not just running after money and then provide some number for policymakers that they cannot start with it.
Thank you very much. Just to follow up, I agree with you on the point of artificial intelligence. So if you look at our solution, it is first from the human level. There is expertise that has been gathered. Then we build sensors. So basically all the parameters that the researchers or the experts look for, we build sensors. So I said if it has a physical parameter that can vary in a way that can be characterized, we can develop the sensors to measure that variations. So the sensors have been developed based on the expertise of the researchers. And then we go another layer to validate it. Once the validation is done, then we place the sensors on the field. So artificial intelligence don't come in at this stage. So we put it on the field. That is what we are doing under Carbon Extra, right? Remember, even with the sensors being validated and all those things, we still don't trust the data as a correct measurement. So it has to be, in quotes, immutable. So blockchain, we add another layer to it so that it can be trusted. So signed by an expert to say that, yes, if this is it, then that is it. So triple, you can call it quadruple layer of verifications, and that is that. We don't trust AI. I agree with you. AI, we all know the case where AI wrote reports with unverifiable references and all those things. So, in fact, even Caleb will never agree to us using AI. But the AI comes in when it comes to seeing the variation. Once the data is placed online on the public platform, what value can be created out of it? That is where AI comes in. But I agree with you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay, then we're going to David. Are there some methods, cutting out methods for accurately measuring carbon in Europe, which we can learn within the African terrain? Because almost all what we're discussing today, what is coming out is the uncertainties in the measurement. So you have a lot of experience when it comes to some of this data, and we want to know whether there are some methodologies which are certain to sharpen our measurement of the carbon.
Well, the traditional way of measuring carbon, of course, is to take a sample and then use a carbon and nitrogen analyzer. So if we take a sample of soil, if I take 10 centimeters of soil from the ground here, and I put it into a vial and I take it to the measurement, then the uncertainty is really low. The uncertainty is enormously low in that sample because of the techniques of measurement. It's precise, it's well calibrated. What the question is how do I then transfer it to the carbon concentration in this room or in this university? The spatial variability is enormous. And that's one of the biggest challenges that we face. And being able to do that is expensive because taking large numbers of samples and putting through the lab is extremely expensive. Following on from what these two gentlemen were just speaking about, my colleagues in New Zealand are using mid-infrared and near-infrared spectroscopy. And this is much more promising in that you can, of course, do it on a sample of soil, but as you mentioned, it's looking like it can be done from space. It can certainly be done from airplanes. And as a result, the whole cost and the certainty is going to be lowered. Well, the uncertainty is going to be lowered. The cost is going to be lowered. So we should be able to expect much more capability of measuring the carbon concentration of soils and spatially scaling that as these techniques develop.
Thank you very much. And then the next question, which is still similar to what we are discussing, will be how might cross-continental data harmonization help in all the uncertainties you are talking about? This goes to Dr. Yeboah, yourself, and then Abad.
All right, thank you very much. I think harmonization of protocols becomes an important criteria to look at. That is why within the work package 1, you realize that we've taken pains to really harmonize the data collection protocols, say that we have what we call the fair principles of data sharing. We need to share the data, and we need to be sure that the data has been collected and harmonized. You heard David when he was speaking, that one of the major challenges we are facing within work package 2 will be the harmonization of the data that has been collected. So it's a critical part that we all need to see how we can overcome it. But there are established guidelines that we have all agreed that we are using within the project so that the data is harmonized. And if it is harmonized, then the output of it can have national implications and then global implications. So that is how we will be able to work across scales. Because at the end of the day, we are managing soils across landscape, not just within a specific geographical area, but if you want to feed a country, then you are looking at it at the national scale. And some of the things that are emerging from the project would have direct implications for sustainable soil management in our own environment. And then at the regional level, we will be able to really put it at the continental level and then at the global level. That's why currently we have what we call the African Union Soil Observatory, trying to see whatever comes out of the national data collection, which has been harmonized, can now be escalated to the regional level and finally at the global level. So we are looking at comparability of data from the national level to the regional level or the African level, and then at the continental level. So here we have the European Union Soil Observatory to look at the European perspective, and then the African Union Soil Observatory, which is being informed by data from the nationals to inform the monitoring at the regional level. So yes, but all these things would have to be done using a harmonized data that is comparable. So that is how we can work across scales and then across continents. Thank you very much.
David, do you have something to add?
I can just add to that, in the sense of course, we all have a lot of archive soils in our, hopefully most countries have archive soils. We never throw a soil away once we've done an experiment. We always keep it. It's so precious because new techniques are coming along all the time. So all of these new techniques for estimating or measuring soil carbon they all need to be calibrated against a true chemical test. And we've just said that the chemical tests are expensive. But they all need to be calibrated. And the more we can push those boundaries of different soil properties to increase the sphere of calibration, it will increase the certainty that we have that these techniques can be used on a wide scale.
Yeah, when speaking about the harmonizer, it's just one important thing, and I fully agree with what's been said, is it just to agree on how we are going to express the carbon. I mean, we have a huge difficulty, some of them they express in gram per kilogram, other by milligram, other by hectare. So we can spend huge time to put all of this data to express it in a way that we can really assess what's going on in terms to make this data comparatively. And other things, if we have this across scale, so I think it will be really worse to compare the site here in Ghana with the site in Europe. It makes no sense. I mean, because we have different pedoclimatic, we have different management, but the comparatively should be made, and this is what I join what has been said by David and this morning in terms of modeling. The modeling would help us to see at what extent this soil or this type of soil is responding based on pressure and what makes this soil more vulnerable to pressure compared to the other. So these things, and you can do it only when you have a set of the data, homogeneous data, very accurate data, and then strong data. You can do that across scale.
Thank you very much. we are now going to policy people, because almost all the things we are going to do, if we don't translate them into policy, then it ends virtually here. Yeah. So, Professor Nimo, he has been my professor for a very long time, too.
Okay. Thank you.
So, I'm still a student going to ask my professor a question. I'm thinking that most farmers are looking out for money. So, anything you are going to talk about, which is not going to translate directly into their pocket, then they will be shying away from. So the question is, some of these regenerative practices and things we are talking about, can they translate to money for the farmer, something like carbon credit, or do you know of any other scheme that is available?
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Caleb. On behalf of our provost, my provost, sorry in the morning we were not here, just to say that before I continue. So there were other meetings. Provost should have been here, likewise, VC. Yes, so thank once again. I think looking at the soil scientists, I was also a bit surprised to even hear how difficult it is to even measure carbon, which means it's a major problem in terms of our food security and others. And we all understand how important carbon is in terms of food production. So the question is, over the years, we've observed a trend in terms of carbon emission. I think it's now trying to a bit, slow down. But we realize that if the carbon we have in the soil should emit, then seriously we're going to suffer in terms of our food production. But coming into your question, then let me put myself in the shoes of a farmer. What the farmer will be expecting to hear is, okay, carbon, how is this? How do you capture this carbon? And where is it? How is it going to increase my performance? Which is a very important socioeconomic, issue. Because we know we cannot see the carbon unless in the lab or so, though we can see the trees and the leaves and what have you. And we have atmospheric, and we also have what? The ground, soil carbon. And as a farmer, or for food production, where we also understand they are rational beings. When we say rational beings, we understand that they are highly influenced by, factors that affect their decision-making. And like every investor, you want to invest where you maximize your utility, where a cedi you invest must yield to a return which is far higher than how much you invested. And the carbon, we see it manifests itself in diverse ways in terms of ecosystem services. And we all know the various ecosystem services, that is the provisioning, the regulating, the supportive or the supporting, and the cultural. You take the first three, the provisioning ecosystem services. I think that is where farmers really understand. They want to know how much I'm getting from a hectare, which is the provisioning, the food production. But we realize that the carbon and other factors, they also contribute to the other ecosystem services or environmental services, which we call them the non-market values. They are not in the market. For you to go and buy, like, I have cultivated rice, so this is how much a bag is. So the other services called the regulating, where in terms of water infiltration and what have you, the soil becomes very, very important in doing that. And the presence of carbon to hold the soil, properties is very, very important issue. Then the supporting services. We know the flora and the fauna, if they are not there, crop production will not even perform. And the carbon binding the other elements and molecules together. So the question is, how do we maintain the carbon? Asking the smallholder farmer who is interested in the provisioning services first. Therefore, carbon market becomes very important. In Africa here, we have Kenya I think Kenya is leading. And over the years, Kenya, Zimbabwe, Gabon, and I think Tanzania is trying to now, put in place a policy document for that. And Ghana, we have to, and we are happy this conference is happening. Ghana, we have to speed up. So through the carbon market, farmers are able to get some incentives. Because the reality is, for us, I use the word, they are rational beings, and for every human, we have what we call the self-satisfying goal. Then it goes to the profit maximization goal. So the self-satisfying goal, every producer will first look at what he will get in the first instance, then what goes to the public. So what goes into the public, which is the carbon we are discussing here, if an individual farmer should invest in that carbon, it goes beyond just the provisioning to the other environmental services. And therefore, we all benefit. But the big question they always have is, have you invested in to you to also enjoy? So some of the measures will be, and it's expensive, as we have said. Even the soil analysis before you know the farmer, this is how much carbon that is present in the soil, so you should reduce the amount of soil management practices. It's expensive. So the carbon market, therefore, becomes very necessary in terms of incentivizing how much the farmer will need to do some of these investments. And over the years, appropriate ministry in Ghana, Ministry of Environment, Science, Technology, and Innovation, through EPA, they've done some studies where a project called Sustainable Land and Water Management Practices, where there are short-term and long-term measures to keep carbon and other ecosystem services. So the reality is, if it's expensive for farmers and for these short-term measures, like you go to the north, the stone bonding, the cover cropping, the composting, and what have you. Some analysis have been done over the years, and you realize that in the short term, they are very expensive, but in the medium to long term, they pay back. But we also understand that as rational beings, we say, generally, people prefer current consumption to future consumption because of time value of money. If they, do I have to compensate you now for investing in something that will benefit society rather than to give it to you in the future, which one will you prefer? And studies have shown that a number of people will say, I want the current consumption. So the initial investment, which will require these supports, must be there. And how can this be done? Through making intentional efforts, through giving some premium, especially if I have cultivated mucuna or puraria to do my plantation. It's also organic, minimizing, inorganic fertilizer. And therefore, whatever I get as my produce will be organic. Am I getting premium price for that? That is also a question we have to ask. Then other incentive measures, I think we can help, promote this. So in a way, you are right. Trying to promote the carbon market, farmers getting the incentives, identifying whatever products they are producing, getting premium and what have you, will motivate them to go into practices that will provide not just provisioning, but the externalities, which are the non-market values for the benefit of all of us for, food security and sustainability. Right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just I fully agree with the carbon market, but in Europe now they are keeping away from this carbon market because it was a kind of, let's say, a misleading situation. And that the reason for that is that they are not paying the right price. It's still very, very low. I mean, you can't as subsidized, you can't fly up these things. I mean, It's really, and then the only, part taking benefits from this is the polluted industry and all of these things, because they said they can pollute as much they can, but they can put only in compensation only a small price that can be go to the farmer. But this price to the ton per hectare or ton per CO2 reduction, it's still very, very low, very low. And then in Europe, last week we have been in meeting because of the observatory, and one of the ladies, this is a new person, she was in the ministry, and then now she is the head of the scientific direction at the INRA. And when I talk about the carbon market, she said, please forget this word and let's talk about other things. So and then many people now, it's really getting away from this just because the price was not much in the reality.
In the context of our smallholder farmers, they will say in the absence of nothing, bad is good. So in the I know in the European context, it is nothing. But our smallholder farmers are people who are selling their prized land to galamseyers for some pittance. So if it is possible to maybe create alternative livelihood from the carbon market, maybe then in the absence of nothing, that can be explored in the meantime.
I fully agree. But if you have a total energy coming and taking some of the land, and then they have to pay only some cent, it doesn't help. They have to pay the real price, real price. Yeah. Because, it is what's happening in many of the European and African countries, and because they buy the government, they buy the president, and they can spend what they want, how much they want to pay. But it's still very, very low, very, very low.
I agree.
But to add quickly, yes, it is, especially if you say then the recommendation would be government should do this, which has been becoming a norm, which is not sustainable. So the reality is there could be other models, either the PPP, the public-private partnership, or even government-owned institutions. The reality is it becomes necessary for us to look at the medium to long-term effects. In other words, then you look at the cost-benefit implications. For instance, if a land is degraded, and like the galamsey we have now, the water is polluted. Now you see Ghana Water Company is crying. Not that crying, but it's a state-owned, which we all benefit. So you see the tariff is now going to be slapped on all of us. So doing the CBC, the cost benefit analysis, then you tell yourself that every year, a company like Ghana Water Company, if we are to do our processing, we spend X million dollars. Now, the preventive measure will be if we incentivize and we go for good agricultural practices. Is it possible, let's say we spend X amount annually, then we are to provide this incentive, not directly from government, but to support. Is it going to be X minus maybe Y or something, X minus X2? Are you getting my point? So as a preventive measure, you come in and you collaborate rather than to continue to spend huge amounts of money. So collaboration could be with Ghana Water Company, the Forestry Commission, and all those institutions looking at their annual budget. And the big question is, if they were to support with an X amount of their budget, would they be better off in the medium to long term rather than to leave everything like that? Therefore, it becomes prevention is better than cure. Than we wait, everything spoils, and you come back. You get it. So you look at the cost-benefit implications, and you are able to make some recommendations. Right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. I think you've been able to. We'll come to the question very quickly. Yeah. So the question is, you've been able to touch on even our last question that should be on the partnerships and this. But the question now is, right from the beginning, we are even talking about the monitoring, where measurement is even still an issue. And when you talk to some of our policymakers, I speak to EPA and others, and they tell you there's money available, but do you have a monitoring system that can be able to do the monitoring, the verification, the reporting, and probably the validation as we're talking about? So I think that is where we are going to. Something which can be able to do this, which almost everybody within the chain will consider trustworthy. And then as Abadi say, those coming in should not pay peanuts. They should be able to pay real value for what the farmers are saying.
All right. I think currently we have the monitoring system in place and then the reporting system. The UNFCCC system is there where even Ghana, we are now working towards using the Tier 2 reporting. So if we report based on the IPCC guidelines, then this becomes a credible source for really verifying all the things that we are doing. So I will encourage, even within the consortium, let's be sure that the participating countries are also reporting using the established IPCC guidelines. In Ghana, we always report on that, and EPA has been doing very well on that. And within the last few years, even within the livestock sector, we've now even worked towards using the Tier 2 reporting, which is quite encouraging. So yes, the IPCC guidelines are there for us to follow, and that becomes a credible source to use when it becomes necessary. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Iboa, you are not running away. In our sphere, you are one of the kingpins when it comes to soil carbon. And the question is, do you have any evidence that people working within the soil carbon storage are getting money? I don't want to say credit, but what the farmers will understand money for their...
From that, I can say yes, because when you go with your sustainable soil management practices, I've been working within the recarbonization of soil using the FAO guidelines and then protocols. With the sustainable soil management practices that are in place, we've worked across various sectors within the country. And when you have improved on your soil carbon storage, it translates into money for you in terms of the yield that you are getting. So even if you are not selling carbon per se, you have the alternative livelihood improvements, which is translating into money and brings you a lot more joy and income. So that is the benefits that we are having in the country. You move to the Laura area, the Upper West region, and you see farmers themselves being motivated to use sustainable soil management practices for their own fields, not with incentives. They themselves do it on their own, and they improve their yields, and they are happy. They are happy. So I think that's the joy. For me, when I see people using the technology available to them and transform their own lives, I think there's nothing more to it than this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Iboa. To be frank, I was asking that question in this respect. Example, Dr. Erasmus Tete is not here, but I was going to use him as an example. Somebody who is having about 200 to 300 acres of something like rubber plantation, which all what you need after the 5 years is good rainfall, which will give you a whole lot of rubber yield. For example, if you are including something like biodiversity on their farm where they can be able to replace some of the rubber trees with something like agroforestry trees. At the end of the day, for him, every rubber tree on the farm gives him money. He is not going to think like the smallholder farmer in Ghana. So for such people, and even some of our older farmers, we believe that they must be able to get extra money for cleaning our environment. What do you say?
Yeah.
Okay, Prof, you can say something.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. You see, that is indirectly farmers who adopt, they tend to benefit. And it means they would have understood the whole concept and they look more into the future, right? But usually the reality is how to get them to understand, which probably will be part of the sensitization, the education. They really need to understand that. Otherwise, they will still go back and think about, is it personal or externality? So it's so true, and they are able to get indirect benefits in terms of the yield differences, and studies have shown that those who do that over the years, gradually, they tend to be better off than those who do not adopt, those practices, right? Just one story. One of the studies we were doing in the north, and an attempt to promote sustainable land and water management practices. We were on the field, and a young farmer we were talking to, and we heard a voice from an elder farmer in the local language. Then we asked, what did he say? He says, you people, I'm going. If you use your land for tree growing, you see what you eat in the future. Right. So that's why I brought in the idea of the understanding the concept, the education, and what have you. Right. So indirectly, it's true. But you see, as I said, human beings we want to see, so it will call for beyond this project, and as we are moving on, we should be able to gather data, analyze, inform. And I like the idea. It should be more like, we say every year our GDP is increasing by this. In Ghana too, as policy-wise, we should have that. They say, what is the total carbon relative to the previous year? What are the dangers? And the promotion must continue so that we all appreciate the fact that if we play with this carbon, we are all going to, perish, right?
I could add, I've been very encouraged by hearing these stories of farmers being very happy because they're apparently gaining soil carbon, but they're also increasing the money through the yield. But I think we just need to bear in mind there are enormous trade-offs often. And certainly the systems I work in, the temperate, highly managed graze systems, then you can't have both. You can't have increased carbon stocks and you can't have increased production at the same time. And often what happens is that our systems are losing carbon, where the farmers, as we were talking earlier on about this, the farmers feel they're gaining carbon, but they're not. They're losing carbon because they're exploiting the system and removing so much of the biomass that there's not enough carbon going back into soil again. My point is it's just not always a win-win. That often compromises need to be made.
Oh, okay. We've been able to exhaust a lot of our questions, and I can see already hands coming out from the participants down. So, Dr. Amani.
I think that the panelists already realized my question and decided to start answering it even before I ask, which is quite interesting. I think Prof just actually made mention of that. We have to be very careful of the trade-offs. And I am somebody who is very cautious when it comes to this kind of new development in terms of sustainability and then new financial flows, because I've worked in forest certification for a long time, and I know how it always starts with the motivation, enthusiasm of what you are going to benefit once you implement it, and I know once you implement it, the issues that comes with it. Having said that, so soil carbon is obviously, if you can enhance soil carbon, it's obviously a good thing. But I don't know his name, but he just mentioned it about the trade-offs. These are very important, and we have to be very careful about them. I'll give you an example. In northern Ghana, crop production is one aspect of livelihood, but then we have livestock. If you're focusing on carbon, obviously you're going to change fire practices and you're going to change grazing practices just to enhance soil carbon. What are you losing? Livelihood. If you focus too much on carbon, also in the savanna landscape, which I'm a savanna ecologist, so I understand this pretty well, What are you going to do? You're going to change fire practices, and you're going to change grazing practices, and you're going to increase tree cover, for example. What do you lose? Biodiversity and livelihood. So I think in this discussion, we have to be careful. Where does increasing soil carbon help? And where do we pursue other alternative sustainable development agenda, right? We always have to balance this to make sure that we don't try to, in fact, my biggest question is how much emissions do we even produce that now we have to worry so much about capturing carbon and reducing our emission just to get, like Doc said, something really small for conserving carbon. So we always have to be very careful about this balancing and also articulating or framing the question in a way that is beneficial to us and not just focusing on one silver solution, soil carbon. If I go to my forestry people, they will tell me reforestation, the solution. You look into that, then you start seeing the problem. So we always have to be very careful about these kind of dynamics. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amani. Does any of happen?
Yeah, thanks very much, Doc, for this submission. It's quite important. It's still about the trade-offs. But you realize that if the soil stores a lot of carbon, the smallest change translates into so much tons of CO2 or greenhouse gases that are emitted. So we are very particular about the little changes that takes place because it translates to a lot of greenhouse gases that are emitted. So we are mindful of that. We always need to look at the trade-offs and see which sustainable management practices will really help us to sustain our productions. In the traditional northern regions where we've been working, we always come out with the farmers identifying the sustainable soil management practices. And we analyze their soils to know what is there. And based on what they have accepted to use, which does not conflict with their livelihood options, then we go in with those. So we are not sacrificing livestock production at the expense of crop production, but we explore the sustainable options that are available. It's not an easy task because if you still want to move at the crop production level, somehow, the livestock sector also is also affected. But we always try to have what we call a balanced options based on the farmer's own criteria and their own assessment. So that is the way to go. But it's quite important for us to provide the data to really look at the policy issues. How much do we need to sequester? At what extent? So that we will still be able to operate in a sustainable manner and then also be able to reduce the greenhouse gases emission. It's something that we need to explore different options to come out with a compromise options that policy can support. And that data we have to provide and provide the guidelines along that, which is evidence-based. And that is a task that you and I would have to work towards and help the government to really take decisions based on the available data to know the trade-offs. Thank you very much.
I think these are real issues on the ground about trade-off. If you go to northern Ghana, for instance, the farmers don't produce enough biomass. So they have to still feed that to livestock and at the same time putting some into the soil. But one thing we also look at is that when they feed to the livestock also give manure that can also be used to put back into the soil. So in complex agro-silvopastoral system, you have the food crops, you have the tree crops, you have livestock, and these are more or less integrated into one system that is very much robust. And then what we also guard against is that our friends in the animal science industry, they know that even urine from animals give a lot of nitrous oxide emissions, methane emissions coming from animal production. So these are also pathways for soil emissions. If you look at the smallholder farmer in a way, emissions are not much. compared to what we do in Africa, but we still want to be, all around, so that we have good practices that are in place. Then, so I think that's what I want to say for now. There is some there, but it has escaped me, so let me leave the rest.
I agree with what Prof is saying, because sometimes we will need, and what Dr. Yeboah said, sometimes we will need to give policymakers real data to be able to, or we even need to even synthesize that data for them, because the first time I heard that because of climate change, we are going to stop almost all ruminant production, I was like, would this be possible in northern Ghana? So some of these things, we will need to look at them critically. I think Emmanuel raised up his hand for a question.
When it comes to this carbon saturation concepts. So the question I'm asking is, we are interested in increasing carbon, but when it gets to the saturation level, what happens? Where does the carbon goes? And is it good that we always increase the carbon and at the end, we end up getting to the saturation level where we don't know where the carbon will
go? Let me help. The concept of carbon saturation is a very sensitive issue. A lot of debate in the literature about carbon saturation. Others refuse that idea that there is nothing like carbon saturation. Because if you want to, the idea is that if you continue to add carbon, the surface area of the soil, in terms of the mineral surfaces, are going to be exhausted. So they cannot hold carbon on the mineral surface again. But there are a number of ways that have also shown that if you have, we need to be more looking at net primary productivity in the system. So I really want us to a little bit, the concept of carbon saturation is highly debatable. Okay, people believe there is nothing like that. And whilst others believe that it depends more on even climate. If you look at our temperate soil, for instance, high temperatures.
Sugar